this idea, and I know that's very difficult, but primarily it's difficult for family members, I think, quite a lot to see, like my daughters found it difficult for me, because they'd seen me go round and round on this abstinence relapse. So there was very little trust there, and then there's this new method where you're going to continue drinking. It's like, all right, oh yeah, right, and then 9 months. I mean, I know that is very, very difficult to try and get family members, spouses to come along on that journey with you. But you do, certainly I think, for me, and I know some people are much quicker, for me, I really think you need to be looking at it as a sort of 1 to 2 year journey here. Well, obviously it's longer than that, but because I mean, certainly for me, it took me over 20 years to get into the state I was in. It took over 20 years for my brain, to become a complete addicted to alcohol. Or so, 9 months, 1 year, 2 years is actually nothing in terms of turning your life around.
Welcome, everybody. It's Katie Lane with Thrive Alcohol Recovery, and I'm back again today with a special guest. Today I have with me Marta. Marta is a Naltrexone and Sinclair Method success story and has been gracious enough to come and share her journey with all of you, which, spoiler alert, she was not, an overnight fix with the Sinclair Method, but man, her life has been changed and transformed through this treatment. So I'm really excited to dive into your story, Marta. I just want to first start by thanking you for joining me.
You're very welcome, Katie. It's lovely to meet you, and it's lovely to be here to share my story. So thank you for asking me.
Yes, and you're coming from Scotland, is that right?
That's correct, yes. I'm quite near Glasgow in Scotland. So, yeah, quite a strong accent for your listeners to tune into.
Yeah, well, we love it.
Understand me.
They're familiar with Bruce Rose, a lot of people who's based in Scotland. So we love the Scottish accent. It's lovely.
Thank you.
I told you, Marta, before we hit record that I wanted to start the interview just reading a short little blurb that you wrote to me as you were scheduling this call, because I think it just gives a great preview of kind of your story and what we're going to talk about in this conversation. So I'm just going to read that, and then I want to jump into allowing you to share your story with us. So in response to, your experience with the Sinclair Method, you say, "It's turned my life around. Alcohol had caused chaos for over 20 years. I tried AA and smart recovery and achieved significant periods of abstinence only to relapse. TSM has cured me, although it took at least a year. It has brought stability in all areas of my life. I wish more people could find this cure much more easily." Absolutely. So that's just a couple sentence preview of your story, which we're going to dive into now. So just to start, I always kind of like to start at the beginning. If you could tell us a little bit about your relationship with alcohol before TSM and, what that looked like and what it is ultimately that led you to the Sinclair Method.
Okay, so I'm 52, and my relationship with alcohol, problematic relationship with alcohol, probably started around being early 20s, where I would have started to drink really as a self-medication for quite a lot of strong anxiety issues. Would get stressed quite easily, and I definitely began using alcohol for that. And then it would just have started off with, maybe a glass, half bottle of maximum of a very low alcohol wine. When I came home from work, or and then over time it just grew and grew. So I was a daily drinker. So by the time I was 30, it was really quite seriously problematic. So, it built up to sort of 1.5 to 2 bottles of wine a day. Um, I had 2 children and I was working full time. So I guess you could call it function, maybe early on high functioning, they like to call it. But I was holding things together, housework, but by a thread. Then I would say by the time I was 40, that functioning started to crumble. Things were not so good, missing work, not good with the children. Um, and yet my marriage broke up. And that's when I started to try and address it. I recognised at that point I have a very serious, everybody knew I have a very serious problem. And I did really recognise it. It was a strong recognition that I had. So I went to AA, and I would never be disparaging about AA ever, because those people welcomed me and shared their stories with me and definitely tried to help me. And I did actually get sobriety, sort of periods of 5 months, 3 months, 7 months. I think 7 months was my record. Then I tried, as I said in my little blurb, smart recovery. I actually became a facilitator in smart recovery. And again, I had these successes, sometimes it would be 3 weeks or 3 months. So that battle continued. I went to Buddhism retreats, I did yoga, I took up meditation, you know, so I was basically in a battle. And then 5 years ago, so that would have been when I was about 47, so a 7 year battle. And somebody, I think it was my daughter, although she doesn't seem to remember this, sent me the video of Claudia Christian doing the TED talk. And that was it. That just made so much sense. So I immediately went into the C3 Foundation uh, website. I found the book, The Cure for Alcoholism, there. I bought that book, I read it. It made sense to me. I watched videos. I'm sure you were, I think you were definitely active at that time when I was looking. I think it might have been early on for you doing your videos and things, Katie. I'm not sure. Um, and I went to Bruce Rose. It, yeah. I, there's a little bit more to that journey, because the first I went to my general practitioner. So this is our primary health care, where you go to your doctor to ask. Um, and that didn't go particularly well. They referred me to, and this will be a story everyone has, I think, they referred me to addiction services. Addiction services told me that I would need to go into rehab before I got it. And then I went to alcohol recovery and I got it, and haven't looked back.
So just to clarify, you were able to get naltrexone. Did you work with Bruce Rose? Is that right, to get it?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Because your traditional healthcare system, because I'm not as familiar with how it works in the UK, but it sounds like naltrexone is still pretty hard to get over there. Is that true?
really, yeah. It's virtually impossible to get it through our NHS, the National Health Service. They seem to give it after rehab, as if it's to stop you relapsing from rehab. So they don't. I've never come across anyone yet that have managed to get it
Wow.
on prescription from the health service. Yeah, you have to go private,
Wow.
unfortunately. maybe there's some enlightened GPs, maybe some people can put messages in to let us know, but I certainly haven't come across any of them. They told me I would have to go into rehab for 4 weeks,
Wow.
and that they would get, because my daughter was still under 18, that they would have to get social services involved, and it was just
Wow.
a no.
Wow.
Yeah.
Get social services involved because your daughter was under 18. Like you're like, this is becoming a bigger mess than it needs to be.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's an ongoing issue for any woman. I don't know how it would be in different states, but to be able, if you have children, to reach out for help can be very problematic for getting external interference, which is,
Wow.
you kind of half understand that, don't you? Because you have to protect children. But on the other hand, you're you are getting interference that will be difficult to manage. Mm.
Yeah. Yeah, that's complicated. And yeah, thank you for sharing that because I don't know much about the healthcare system there, but that is
Mm.
something I hear a lot in comments and emails that people can't get it on the NHS. So if
Yeah.
anybody watching this has been able to get it on the NHS, like please drop a
Mm.
comment below. We're curious. Bruce Rose and what he runs now with Matt, Rethink Drink, they work with a private doctor, which is how they're able to help people get it. So that does seem to be like a loophole, but then you have to pay out of pocket and hopefully go to a doctor that's knowledgeable about it, right?
Well, yeah, so you would have to have money to do that, Katie. So that's difficult, isn't it? Not everyone has got money to go privately for
Mm.
that. So, um, yeah, so the NHS should be free for people.
Mm.
Um, but I think it's just a big awareness information. It's a deficit in information, that doctors, and it's not just the doctors, it's actually the addiction services, people that are actually paid to be specialists
Mm.
in addiction service. They don't see the TSM. They don't understand it. They don't understand this. You can drink and take your pill and
Yeah.
it'll cure you type thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Even here in the US where naltrexone is getting easier and easier to get, like you can get it. I mean, we're not, a funded healthcare system, so we're used to paying for our healthcare here.
yeah,
But it is getting easier and easier to get, and there's doctors in all 50 states that prescribe online naltrexone fairly easily for most people. But um,
right.
there are still the doctors, like the majority of the medical system doesn't know about it yet, or if you go to your general doctor,
Mhm.
they might prescribe it, but they may not. Like it's not well known yet, but thankfully we have
Mm.
this kind of change happening on the side. But yeah, that's interesting. So thank you for speaking to that. I wanted to just go back a bit. You talking about, I mean, it sounds like your drinking started in your 20s and it just progressed and it really became problematic by your 40s. And that's when you went to AA and SMART and got a period of abstinence, which can be very, very difficult, but then would relapse again. So what was that like for you in that time where you were kind of trying to be active in AA or even becoming really involved with SMART and able to achieve sobriety, which sounds like that was always the standard because it is really hard to moderate drinking outside of naltrexone in my experience. But just tell us, what was that like for you kind of going through that path of recovery, yet not feeling like you're able to get like a long stretch of healing and feeling like you're really, I mean, quote unquote, cured. Can you tell us what that was like?
Well, I Smart Recovery have got quite a nice view of relapses. Um, that not to look at them as terrible, terrible failures. One of the sort of examples they would give, that if you're going on a journey from A to B, and halfway on that journey, your tire goes flat, you don't go back to A. You've actually, you put your tire back on and you move on. So the periods of abstinence were very useful, actually. Um, and very useful and the tools of smart recovery as well were very useful when I started on the TSM method. Because a period of abstinence at least gives you the insight into what abstinence feels like. Yeah, you feel good, you feel healthier, you feel more positive, you start to build a life, you start to do things. So there's never a loss on achieving abstinence in my view. Although, because the whole time is not just tough, it's not just all white knuckling, However, so having said that, and if I do think that's really important for people, that if they have got abstinence under their belt, that will be good for the future if they go down the TSM route, because they will have learned so much about themselves in that period. But that cycle, alcohol causes, I think, the deepest despair. I don't think I'm sure other addictions are the same. It's probably addiction, because I've not got other addictions. Mine is alcohol. The depth of despair that the black pit, I sometimes like to call it, is very difficult to explain to anybody who's not been in it, you know, because you have guilt. What did you say? What did you do? You have the horrible dread, the horrible fear. You have just terrible negative thoughts, how to get out of this. Um, so yeah, I often say that I sometimes support the on the Facebook pages when people are just starting, and they're talking about the side effects of Naltrexone. And I know some people is intolerable. I really do know that. But, for majority of us, it's a little bit nauseous and a little bit, you know, uh, feeling a little bit strange. Like, look, you know, compared to that black pit, this is absolutely nothing, and it will go away. So, um, yeah. So, I hope that's answered your question. Has it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I appreciate you mentioning just Smart's perspective, because I know people who go to Smart and do TSM, and it seems like it's less black and white or whatever compared to other treatments. So I think that's incredible. And you nailed it that, like as a recovery coach, we call it recovery capital. And maybe you use that term as a Smart facilitator, but it's like those sober days and sober periods of time are never lost. And I often find that if people come to TSM like you did with that, experience, and like you said, how to live life sober, how to have a bad day and not drink. Yeah, maybe it was, white knuckled or difficult, but like how to navigate those. So thank you
Yeah.
for speaking a bit to that.
The other thing, you know, is because if you're drinking every day, if your drinking is that problematic, then you don't actually have a life. You are sending your life drinking. And you do see that with people coming new as well. What do you do with your time? I think, because I was over 20 years of drinking. So I think you even lose touch with what you like. What did you like to do before? What do you like to do that doesn't involve alcohol? You know, um, if you even if you like music, going to see a music. When did you ever go and see music without being drunk? You know, did you watch a movie? I mean, how many movies I must have watched and never actually got to the the end of the movie, or can't remember the movie, or you have to rebuild that balance in your life about what you like to do and what hobbies you like to do, etc. And a good period of abstinence at least gives you a chance to do that, I
Yeah.
think. Yeah.
Yeah, you nailed that again. I was a daily drinker as well, and it just felt like drinking was my purpose. And like that question you asked, which maybe some people watching don't have an answer right now of like, what do I like to do outside of drinking? It's we can think of things conceptually, but usually it involves alcohol or things like that. I remember having to go back to childhood and be like, what did I do that didn't involve alcohol? Okay, I could ride my bike, I could go get ice cream, see a movie, and that's literally where I started rebuilding my
Yes,
life.
yeah.
So were you okay when you started TSM? Remind us again what year it was and like where were you
Okay.
at in your recovery journey? Had you quote unquote relapsed and you were looking for an alternative treatment, or what was going on for you?
Yes, I was drinking again heavily. So I relapsed in the May, and I think I found the TSM in the October. Yeah. So yeah, so that's where I was, and I had quite a big period of abstinence there, and I actually was doing like long distance hikes, like multi-day treks. So I did this quite famous multi-day trek in Scotland called the West Highland Way, and um, and then after I finished it, I drank.
Isn't that so just the cycle of alcohol use disorder? Like we build
Yeah,
ourselves up, we're doing great, and then, oh, I
yeah,
could drink right now.
yeah, and I think it was almost linked with the endorphins, because I'd done so well and I was so high with it. And I was like, just bump that endorphin up a little bit more.
Exactly. That's what we do. I really do think that's what's happening because you feel so good, and we know that alcohol makes us feel even better.
Yeah, exactly. So that's where I was.
Okay, so you
So that was
started,
November 2019. So that was actually just before the lockdowns happened in the 2020, didn't it? I get my
yes.
years. Yeah, 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 yeah. So basically, my TSM journey was primarily through lockdown initially.
Wow.
Yeah, the November to the February. We lockdown happened in February. So yeah, mostly at home, which actually was a tremendous help in a way because I didn't have to go to work. I mean, I had to work.
Yeah.
I didn't have to go to work. Um, yes, and I was kind of at home. No, I didn't. So I was able to drink. I just drank.
Yeah.
I took my pill though, and I drank. Um, I very quickly though moved from wine to beer, um, really quickly, and the to the point where I mean I can't even now I can't smell wine. I can't. I wouldn't. I couldn't take wine. That was my drink of choice was wine,
Wow.
and that happened really quite quickly. That the smell, etc. So it wasn't actually a rational choice. That because I know people do that, and it's a really good move to move down from a higher content to a lower content. That just happened to me naturally because whatever the smell of wine became horrible. So I moved to a lower content, which was beer, quite quickly. And I didn't, but I was daily drinking. I mean, I did track in the early days, and I probably do have those trackers, that I could look back on. But I didn't. I stopped it. But I don't think that I got really any two consecutive alcohol-free days until about 9 months. Um, yeah, I didn't push for it either. I didn't. Because I was drinking beer, I couldn't drink so much beer. I couldn't really get that drunk on beer, and I, I didn't have any, didn't have big problems. Immediately all of that total chaos actually went.
Wow.
You know, but it was still daily drinking, but at a lower level. And then about 9 months in, um, I started to get kind of consistent alcohol-free days. Yeah.
Well, I think that's going to be helpful for a lot of people to hear because sometimes for us daily drinkers, when we're on the treatment, we're not seeing those alcohol-free days come fast enough. It can be sort of
Yeah,
discouraging, even if there are other changes. So thank you for speaking to that. And that's just the
yeah,
reality of this journey for, a lot of people, actually.
yeah. So I kind of took some notes myself on kind of on sort of top tips. What would you give as your top tip? And I mean, certainly one of the things for me, because I did, is that you want to look at it as a medium term solution and in the context of the amount of time that you have been drinking. I think, this idea, and I know that's very difficult, but primarily it's difficult for family members, I think, quite a lot to see, you know, like my daughters found it difficult for me, because they'd seen me go round and round on this abstinence relapse. So there was very little trust there, and then there's this new method where you're going to continue drinking. It's like, all right, oh yeah, right, and then 9 months. I mean, I know that is very, very difficult to try and get family members, spouses to come along on that journey with you. Um, but you do, certainly, I think for me, and I know some people are much quicker. For me, I really think you need to be looking at it as a sort of 1 to 2 year journey here. Well, obviously, it's longer than that, but um, because I mean, certainly for me, it took me over 20 years to get into the state I was in. It took over 20 years for my brain, to become a complete addicted to alcohol. Or so, 9 months, 1 year, 2 years is actually nothing in terms of turning your life around. I don't know if you would agree with that, but I really do think that I know it's more difficult for people when they're in that situation and they need that fixed. They need the relationships fixed or their job fixed, and so keeping that perspective um is more difficult. But
Yeah.
yeah, I do think it's quite important to try and be patient with it.
No, I agree with that. And as a coach, I've seen that, the last 6 years that that's the mindset that's most helpful because if we expect results in 3 months and we don't see them, we're just going to be crushed because for a lot of people, this is kind of their last hope. They've tried
Mm,
everything else. And so having those realistic expectations that this is a long-term treatment, there's no race. I feel like we are the ones making the changes on this journey. And if we feel empowered to do those changes and not someone like coercing us or forcing us, like you
mhm.
felt empowered, I'm sure, to take 9 months and then you felt ready for your first alcohol free day. Had someone been there month one, been like, hey, you need to have an alcohol free day, like that would not have been very helpful. Right. At
No,
least I
yeah,
would
yeah.
imagine.
Yeah,
um
but the content did come down though. I mean, the amount did come down. So I guess if I was one of the people where that didn't happen either, that would be quite hard. But yeah, so
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, I think for a lot of people, even if you are still drinking daily, or even if you're still drinking way more than you want, if we can again have a mindset of like paying attention to the changes. I mean, you kind of giving up wine and switching to beer and drinking less, or, people see
yeah,
other changes. I mean, paying attention to those little changes is a sign that the treatment is working, and that's worth celebrating, even if you feel like your, long-term goal is still a ways away.
yeah.
Yeah, that's great. I wanted to go back real quick because I was just curious. So you said in the beginning you had to stop drinking wine because you just lost the taste for it. How quickly did that happen for you? And was that disappointing at all because wine was your go-to?
I know. And I've not really come across that happening to people. I've come across that once they swap, they swap. Um, it happened really, it really did happen really quite quickly. So I can't totally explain that
Hmm.
why that. that happened. Um, and it would make me feel actually sick, feel wanting to vomit. So maybe it was just an interaction with the naltrexone,
Hmm.
because it did make me a bit nauseous. But yeah, it happened very quick. Certainly, I would say it was within the sort of first 6 weeks
Okay.
that
Yeah.
happened. Yeah,
Very
yeah,
quickly.
and it's never changed. I've never, because I did continue to drink as I've been abstinent more or less now for a year. Um, so it took 4 years to get to this point where I really don't care.
Okay. Y-
I don't have, I just, it's like a poison almost. I don't really have no interest
Yeah.
in alcohol, you
Yeah.
know, and I see a lot of people, unfortunately, in my life still struggling with it. Um, you know, so I've absolutely I have no real interest in it at all now. But I was drinking periodically, but I still never went back to wine.
Never
So
would. I hear that from people. There's something about, and it doesn't happen for everyone, but it took me maybe 9 months to lose my taste for wine. So it happened for you much more
right,
quickly, but
right,
it does happen for people, or they can't drink red and they go to white, or vice versa, or,
yeah, right,
but
strange one, isn't it? It's quite
it
strange.
is, yeah, it's
I
something with
know.
naltrexone for sure.
Hmm.
Okay.
Okay, we'll need to figure that one out.
Yeah,
Little research project. Why is that happening?
I know. I know. Yeah, it is, it's interesting. Okay, so I heard you kind of tell us that you're not really drinking nowadays as much, but it sounds like you were on TSM for 4 years, drinking almost daily for the first year, and then started having more
Yeah,
alcohol-free days. So what was it
yeah.
like, the last 4 years you've been on this treatment and kind of gradually reducing your drinking? Like, can you kind of paint a picture of what the last several years has looked like with your relationship with alcohol?
Well, I told my daughters, right? So my daughters are 31 and 21. And I told them I was doing this interview. And they were like, oh, that's fantastic. You're doing that. And both of them, you know, say things like, why do people not know about this? I want to shout about this from the rooftops. You know, the difference is just incredible. Which is, in fact, they almost forgotten what it was like. You know, they have to be reminded what it was like to have a drunken mother every night, Um, so the difference is just absolutely enormous. You don't wake up feeling ill. You don't have the craving, oh my God, when does the shop open? Or when do I get home so I can open my wine and I can drink my wine? Or, you don't have any of that. Um, you have more money. You're much healthier. Uh, your relationships are vastly improved and they're real. You're present for people, your daughter, any family. My parents are getting a bit older, they need a bit of support. You know, I'm there. I can drive. I'm the designated driver. If there's an emergency, they know they can phone me. I will be there. They would never have been able to phone me, you know. Um, so all of those things. I can plan for the future. I do my long distance trekking. I'm not long back from Iceland. Um, yeah, so I'm planning Japan. I've got other treks that I want to do. So with a group of women, it's just night and day the difference. I don't know if I've covered everything there, but
Yeah, gosh, it's like, yeah, we are focusing on reducing our drinking, but the changes that come in our life, and not because we're willing it and telling ourselves we can't drink or we're not allowed to drink, it's because it just becomes so unimportant that you finally get to live the life that maybe deep in your heart or in the back of your mind, like that you've always
yeah,
aspired to live. But alcohol's just taken a priority over that. So it just sounds like you're
Yeah,
really living life now.
yeah, yeah. And the I really find it's I didn't believe that this could happen. That you actually, I've got the book, The Cure for Alcoholism, um, you know, and it actually cures your alcoholism. There's maybe a slight caveat to that, in that I would never drink without taking my pill. I'm frightened of that. I've actually seen somebody who was on TSM with who started drinking without their pill, and it's gone quite quickly back to weekends, all weekend, just drinking, you know. Um, so I wouldn't drink without my pill, and I do still take my pill everywhere, just in case. Um, so that is the caveat. So it's a cure in that my day, I don't have my day does not get interfered with thinking about my next drink. How much can I drink? When can I drink? Hiding wine bottles in the bathroom so that I could drink without my daughters knowing that I was actually having a drink, all of that. So I'm not governed by it. So in that way, I'm cured. But I do believe if I drank without my pill, I would very quickly go back.
Yeah,
So I've never been ever been non-compliant.
that's
Uh,
great.
Ever. I've not
Yes.
even really been tempted. I'm frightened of that, actually.
I relate
Mm.
with that as well. I know some people struggle with compliance, but I think for most people that I've encountered, it becomes this non-negotiable because we just see the benefits of naltrexone and yeah, we don't want to go back to where we were. It's life-changing. So
Yeah,
over the last 4 years or
exactly.
so, like what did your drinking just kind of steadily decline? Like you were drinking less and less, you had more and more alcohol-free days. Like what did that
Yeah,
look like if you were to verbalize like a drink log or something over the last 4 years?
yeah. So I got to the 2 days alcohol free, which I think is, if you can try and get the 2 days alcohol free in a row, um, I think that's a game changer. Well, it's that for me that started, that was a game changer. And doing something on that second day, because they talk about the first day being a washout to take naltrexone out your system, and the second day is your opportunity to do something that gets endorphins going. I know I'm oversimplifying it, but gets endorphins going on something else, right? Anything else that you could get them going on. And it can be anything that you like to do, whether it's gardening. I think I did quite a lot of gardening. I like gardening, seeing a result there, going for a hike in the mountains, whatever it is they say good food, sex, anything, jogging that you can do. And I think so. That was a kind of turning point for me to get the 2 days in, and then start to build my hobbies and what I like to do around those 2 days. Um, so then it just grew and grew. Now, so I think then it moved to maybe drinking once a week. I still liked to get drunk, I like the mental freeze of drinking. So I think it went down to 1 week, and I think it stuck at 1 week, once a week, for a good year. So I would say first year mostly drinking, second year getting the sort of 2 to 3 days alcohol free, third year once, maybe twice a week, yeah, and then into the fourth year really ad hoc, and then this year, well, not this year, but last year, I don't know, I maybe drank 3 times. Yeah.
3 times in the whole year?
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah. So I'm not like totally choosing to be abstinent, if you know what I mean. I'm not I just don't have really I really don't have any interest in it. Um, you know, so and sometimes I feel maybe a little bit sad, when you see everybody drinking at I don't know, a celebration. So I might take my pill there and think, well, I'll have a glass of champagne or something. But honestly, I did that with my daughter's 21st in October, and I did that, and I drank half the glass. so, so I thought it was going to be nice, but then I was like, oh, that's actually horrible.
oh my
So,
gosh. That's incredible. I mean,
mm,
just really
I would
cool
have
to,
been the person ordering the second bottle of champagne, and the third bottle. That would have been me for sure.
wow.
Mm,
And you couldn't even finish a half a glass
no,
or a
no,
glass.
no
Wow.
interest. No,
That's
yeah,
incredible. And to
it's
hear you
massive.
say too, because you had been on the method for over a year and, still drinking most days. And it sounds like you were also getting drunk when you were drinking. Now, I see people
Yeah.
in that situation and they can feel really discouraged. So, where were you at that point? Did you still feel hope that this was going to continue to progress? Were you discouraged at all? I'd love to hear about that.
Um, I don't recall being discouraged. Um, Katie, I knew it was working. I
Yeah.
knew there was a change, and I watched I was on the Facebook pages and I watched interviews. Uh, that some people are slower. Keep compliant, just keep compliant. You know, so I just kept sticking with that. That I'm keeping compliant. It's coming down. It's just going to keep going and just keep going. So I don't really remember being despondent, but that could be a memory.
Yes.
Our memories are not they're not 100%. I don't remember getting despondent, but
That's Well,
yeah,
if you did, it sounds like it wasn't very severe or very serious because I think people can
no,
feel that way if they're comparing themselves to another. They have this expectation, oh, I should have been cured in a year and I'm not there yet. Because I work with a lot of people who are a year plus on TSM and have seen awesome changes, but they're not where they
yeah,
want to be yet. And so that's why I find your story so fascinating because you are that person who, I mean, I guess like, yeah, I mean, you've been on the method for 4 years now, right? Going on
at
five
five
is
actually, yeah,
wow.
because it was late 2019, yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, 5.
At
So
what point in your journey did you know, like, I mean, do you claim that you're at extinction, that kind of end
oh
point
yeah,
of regain control? Like, when did that happen for you?
I would say at the end of year 3.
The end of year three. Okay.
So that's 3 years.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
people listening, like really listen to that because my heart breaks when people get discouraged and they see others getting there in 6 months, 9 months, but like looking at your story, I mean, your progress just continued and continued. And
Hmm.
yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. But the only thing I would say about that, Katie, is I do think you do need to do a little bit of work around, you know. So Smart Recovery was a terrific um, support for me, because it has a lot of tools about how to build a balanced life. And you can do that through other ways like coaching, about these building of habits, about looking after yourself. Lots of different, and I went to, sorry, I should have said, I also went to cognitive behavioral therapy as well in terms of managing stress, and that was very effective as well. So I do think, um, the number one rule is be compliant. Don't move from compliance, but there's definite other self progression and self development self-assessment, self-improvement to be done as well, I think, in that journey, and
Yeah.
try and do the two together. You know, I do think you can't totally get away without working a little bit on yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, well said, Marta. I totally agree with that as well. Like I often say, we have to meet the medicine halfway. Like naltrexone is the foundation, the cornerstone. I don't think I'd be where I am today without it. But there came a point where I could see what naltrexone was doing for me, and then I had to do my part as well. Like the choice to drink was always the default easy choice, and I could always do that. But then I remember one memory in particular where I had a really bad day and I was like going home to have my drink and naltrexone, and I don't want to be someone who turns to alcohol every time I have a crummy day. Like I just don't want to have that as part of my life anymore. And so that just kind of hit me that I've got to figure something else out. Like that sounds really, simple and maybe obvious, but that was like a really big thing to tackle because I've been turning to alcohol for 10 years as a coping skill. So I think
Yeah,
if what I'm hearing you correctly, that's kind of what you're talking about with the work you have to do alongside the treatment to make these meaningful changes, especially, for people like you and
yes,
I, who've been daily drinking for years or decades, there's a lot to change there, right?
yes, definitely. And even the that that craving of wanting the alcohol, I feel stressed. Um, for alcohol is my go-to, as you say, that craving for alcohol. Actually, even just being able to address that, like, hold on, I'm craving the alcohol, but is it actually of any benefit? Is it really solving my stress? The naltrexone, I think, gives you that space, that little gap to be able to see that and say, well, you know what? I can ride through that craving. You know, I could go for a bath instead, or I go for a little walk instead, or tidy a drawer instead. Whatever, to do something, because that craving will pass. And when I wake up in the morning, I'm going to be very pleased because nobody wakes up in the morning and goes, oh, thank goodness I drank that bottle of wine. I don't believe anybody does, but you do wake up in the morning going, oh, I am so pleased I didn't drink that
Yeah.
bottle of wine. You know, but so the nutrition gives you that little space to have those thoughts, but you still have to take some mastery over it, don't you? I think that's the truth.
Yeah, and you said it well. I say it in that same way as well, that it gives you that space because it just quiets that craving where before maybe it was screaming and you couldn't hear anything else or think about anything else. It just, yeah, it might still be there because it's habituated in your brain. But like you said, you can distance yourself from it. You can really think about it, weigh the options. Sure, you might still drink, but at least you're giving yourself the space and the choice to try something else. And I
Yeah,
think that's really I've observed with people, that's the turning point for them, where when they can just allow that space to be there and not knee jerk response to drink and they can try something else, that's where they can really start to see the changes and interrupt the habits. Because I guess that's a question I have for you. Like, did you struggle with what a lot of people call like drinking out of habit on this treatment, where, you felt like you could be drinking less or having an alcohol free day, but you were drinking anyway because it was just habitual?
I was definitely drinking because it was habitual. Definitely. Oh, for yeah, for the first 2 years, I was definitely drinking. But because it was habitual. I mean, I drank every day. That's what I did. So yeah, it's a big habit. But even once you get the addiction under control, it is a habit, to try and break. Yeah, I mean, just even small things that now I wouldn't even bother with. But like if I was going to a friend's house, I would think through what am I going to drink, you know. So would make nice mocktails to drink, like oh gosh, I can't remember the name of it. The mojitos. you get their fantastic mocktails, with the mint, and ginger ale, non-alcoholic, etc. So thinking that through, what, in this environment, what will I drink, that's still quite nice to drink and will meet that habit of drinking something that looks, sociable. Now I don't bother. I just have tea. I get green tea. I don't care what people think. But then I did. So, um, all of that's habitual, isn't it? Even making a drink, what you're offering people to drink, uh, that you have to follow through and change. Yeah,
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 absolutely. Yeah, I think a lot of us realize when we get on naltrexone and we feel it working, we can start to see how clearly we're drinking out of habit. Maybe before, again, that craving was so strong, we were just responding to it. But then as that kind of quiets down, we can see the habits that are clearly at play in our lives. Um,
absolutely. I go out for dinner. I have wine before my dinner, that's really interwoven
yeah,
into everything,
yeah.
that we did. And unfortunately, a little bit what society does. Um, but that is the other thing. I see some people seem to worry about what others might think if you don't drink, but I don't think anybody cares whether you drink or not.
Yeah.
You just don't. If you're ordering, you just order what you want rather than alcohol. Do you? I don't think people actually care whether you drink. Do you?
I don't think they care either. Yet I think it's something we all go through where we think that they're caring more than they are when really they're just focused on themselves. I too,
Yeah,
I would kind of go out of my way to bring non-alcoholic beer or just try to fit in. But then the more I did it, I'm like, oh, this really doesn't matter. And now I show up with like my thermos of tea or something like, but
I'm,
yeah,
I'm
it's so
tea as well.
interesting.
Yeah.
We're
Okay.
and people might, if your friends are drinking a lot, they might of course question you or for me that was an awkward part of the journey. I don't know about you, but being someone who was like always the drinker at the social functions to slowly transitioning to not, it required a couple awkward conversations, I will say, and like telling people I struggled with my drinking and all of that. But once I had those conversations, they were done and I didn't have to have them again, and it was
Yeah.
pretty freeing.
Um. I wouldn't even tell people unless they were close to me. People that are close to me, I just tell them, I'm on Naltrexone, because I did have friends that were drinking friends,
Mm,
you know, and I still actually have kept two friends that are drinkers, that struggle a bit. Well, do struggle with it, and they can see the huge difference in me. They speak about it a lot. Your eyes are clearer, your skin is clearer, you've more energy. But I wish I could do it, but they're not ready to take that commitment, because that's the other thing, Katie. It is a commitment, isn't it? And in a way, it's a lifelong commitment that you're actually making to yourself and to your life. Um, and you do have to reach that point where you're prepared to make it, don't you? That this is it. I'm
yeah.
doing this, and I'm not. Um, it's not when I feel it was difficult for me to take. But um, because sometimes I think I've said to my friend, you could do it, but she's not ready. She's not, or either not ready or willing, to make that commitment to taking the pill.
Yeah.
So that's the main thing. If you've got to that point where you're making that commitment, then you have made one mighty leap.
Yes.
And that's wonderful in itself.
It is. And yeah, you're right. Even though you're taking this silly little pill, I say it's like opening up Pandora's box because you're changing so much and not only drinking less, but yeah, your life is changing. You're rediscovering who you are outside of alcohol. And yeah, if you're not, 10 out of 10 committed to this process, it's easy to give up along the way. But what's great about the Sinclair method and naltrexone too is if you try and you're not quite ready, like it's going to be waiting there for you when
Yeah,
you are.
that's true. Yeah, yeah. I guess I had tried other things so much as well, uh, that I was obviously very much ready to commit,
Yeah.
and I've never really never thought about non-compliance. Um, so I guess some people might find it earlier in their journey. They don't need so many tires falling off.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so they might relapse a bit more. I mean, I try not to be complacent about it because I can maybe understand people saying, oh, well, I could drink now, you know, I've been abstinent, so I could just have one, and I have caught like the odd little sneaky thought, very, very murmury, you know, um, that has to be dismissed. So
Hmm.
that does worry me. I don't like to be overly complacent, and you have seen some people relapse. Well, Claudia Christian has spoken about it herself,
Hmm.
drinking without becoming non-compliant. So hopefully, Katie, not in a year or so, I'm not back. But I would, yeah, it's got to be lifelong commitment
Yeah.
to taking a little
Yeah.
pill.
And I'm glad you said that because people have literally who've started drinking again without naltrexone, that's what they tell me. Oh, I got complacent or I got too cocky or too confident thinking I could drink again, like that I
Yeah,
was cured and I'm fine.
yeah,
And I've had
that's
those
really
sneaky
true.
thoughts too every once in a while, like, oh, I could drink without it, or what would that be like? It's more just like a silly little passing thought. It's never something I
Yeah,
want to act on, but I am
yeah.
aware, like, I will never, if I drink again, I would never drink without naltrexone. I know that for sure.
Well, I hope not. It's where I am. That frightens me.
Yeah.
That really frightens me that if that was to happen, because I do really believe my brain is such. I
Right.
will be back. I
Yep.
will be back down. But as you say, I guess you would have the pill again. But oh gosh, imagine going.
No, I
So
know. Don't
yeah,
take me back there, please.
no, the dark pit.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to
Okay.
ask you another question because something that I've seen people commenting lately is a lot of people who do the Sinclair method end up quitting drinking. Like, though we can drink moderately, though we can drink as much as we want to on this treatment, a lot of
Mm,
people end up going alcohol free or basically alcohol free. I know you're not saying you're abstinent, but you drank 3 times last year. So it's like,
yeah.
what's that been like for you? Like, did you expect to be in this place with drinking? I heard you say earlier you just don't have any interest in it, so it's easy not to drink. But just speaking to people who maybe they're starting out or they're like, the idea of not drinking is terrifying, and why would you go alcohol free or almost alcohol free if you can drink? Like, can you talk about your experience with where you're at currently with your relationship with alcohol and being mostly alcohol free?
Yeah. Um, well, I didn't. I said I definitely didn't plan to be abstinent, but I have to say, I almost just view it as a poison now. It just, it is a poison. It's a poison for your body. Um, yeah, I don't really see it does much good to anybody really. I see a lot of people struggling with alcohol. Even if they haven't got to this, really bad state where it's interfering with everything, but there's a lot of people struggle with alcohol, and drink too much that badly affects their health and their relationships. So I guess my whole view of it is that it's not a positive thing. I don't view anything really about it positively anymore. You know, the taste, really, the smell, really. Yeah, I just there's not really that much going for it. I guess once it's switched off my I don't get the high with it. Then over time, it's just turned me that I don't really like. I just don't like it. I don't want it. I don't want it.
Yeah. Yeah, when the brain is fixed and it's not hijacked to crave alcohol anymore, it just your perspective on it completely changes in a way that is unexpected and hard to even describe or fathom if you haven't gone through it yourself. Because as you maybe when you started the treatment, it's like, I mean, I loved to drink. I loved alcohol. I wanted it everywhere. Like, yeah, I couldn't imagine not having it, but your perspective
Mm.
really changes because your brain changes.
Yeah. And I have absolutely no problem out for a meal with people at Christmas time. We had all family together, people drinking wine with the meal, drinking over the night, whatever whiskey, quite a big one here. Uh, so I have absolutely no problem with it. I don't actually mind other people drinking. I'd have no issue whatsoever with them drinking. Once they get a bit too drunk, it becomes a bit boring because people repeat themselves and things. But I don't have any problem sitting there and having tea or fruit juice or
Yeah.
anything in that company. And I feel as if I can still have a good time, and I don't feel it's stopping me doing anything at
Yeah.
all. Not drinking.
That's
No,
great. Yeah, especially because you're not like, yeah, wishing you could drink and not allowing yourself to drink. It's just
no,
the want isn't there, right?
it's not there, Katie.
Yeah.
It's just
That's
absolutely not there.
that's
Yeah. So hopefully that helps people that are on the journey, and don't give up, keep going. Just take your pill, and you too can get your life back.
yeah. Well, this has been such an incredible conversation, Marta. I did want to ask you, like, if you had any tips or final thoughts for people watching. I know you kind of gave a few suggestions there, but anything else before we wrap up?
Um, no, just that this works. You know, it works. And if you feel, from what I can see, watching other people, if you feel any change at the start to your drinking behavior, you know, you see, if you feel any change at that start, like a lesser want or a slight change, you know, then it seems that works for you. And it's what you're talking at 85% in that kind of area. It's very, very high. So if you feel that little change at the start, then it will work for you. And then it's just a matter of sticking with it, you know, and maybe looking at it a little bit longer term than thinking 3 months and I'm going to be all sorted. Hopefully, bringing your family and loved ones along with you and looking at it a little bit longer term, and it will turn you around. It will. You will get your life back.
Mm. Yeah, it's so encouraging and gives people hope. And so I hope people watching this have that feeling because we can feel so hopeless. And like you were talking about the despair that comes with just this problem, like this completely can free you from it and do so permanently. And you can get your life back and become the best version of yourself that you know is there, but alcohol's kind of been masking. Um, so wow,
Yeah,
thank you so much, Marta, for speaking with
thank
me and
you.
sharing your story.
Thanks for all that you're doing, Katie, to try and spread the word and support people. It's really fantastic. And I don't know, even if it helps one person listening to this, then that's going to be worth it.
Yes, I know it will. This is going to help people for years to come. So, congratulations on your success with it as well, and that you're out there living an incredible life, traveling now, doing the things you love to do, and your kids are
Yeah,
proud of you. Like, that's such an incredible feeling when you get that feedback from your loved ones.
I know. Absolutely. Okay. Thanks for your time.
Have a
Really
great
appreciate
night.
it.
I will see you later.
Thank you,
Bye.
Katie. Bye.